Back in the 70s, beer wasn't just a drink, it was a whole vibe. From backyard barbecues to smoky dive bars, these brews were everywhere until they weren't. Today, we're cracking open the past and taking a cold, refreshing look at the most famous beers of the 1970s in the U.S. that completely disappeared. Ever heard of Jax Beer? What about Sterling Beer or Lone Star Beer? Yeah, we're going there. So grab a seat, pop a can, if you can find one, and let's pour one out for the legends that fizzled out. Ballantine Beer was once one of the most recognized names in American brewing. Founded in 1840 by Peter Ballantine in Newark, New Jersey, the brand grew into one of the largest beer producers in the United States. The company was one of the few breweries to survive Prohibition by producing malt syrup and medicinal alcohol. After Prohibition ended in 1933, Ballantine quickly re-established itself as a major player in the beer industry. By the 50s and 60s, it had become one of the top-selling beers in the country, competing directly with brands like Budweiser and Schlitz. Ballantine's success was largely built on its flagship products, Ballantine Beer, Ballantine Ale, and the strong and hoppy Ballantine India Pale Ale. The IPA, in particular, was notable for its unique aging process, stored in wooden barrels for months to develop its distinctive flavor. In 1969, the brand was acquired by the Falstaff Brewing Corporation, which struggled to maintain its market share. As competition increased, Ballantine's production facilities aged and investment in modernization lagged behind. By the late 70s and early 80s, Ballantine had faded from shelves across much of the country. Ortlieb's beer was once a familiar name in the American brewing industry, particularly in the Philadelphia region. Established in 1869 by Ruppert Ortlieb, a German immigrant, the brewery gained a reputation for producing quality beer at an affordable price. The company operated from its large brewing facility in Northern Liberties, Philadelphia, where it produced a range of lagers and ales. The beer was widely recognized for its simple, straightforward taste, and its distribution extended beyond Pennsylvania to other states in the mid-Atlantic region. National brands like Budweiser, Miller, and Coors began dominating the industry with aggressive marketing campaigns and large-scale production. Smaller, regional breweries like Ortlieb's struggled to compete with the pricing and advertising power of these larger corporations. Ortlieb's adapted by introducing new products, including light beer options, but the competition proved too strong. The brewery remained family-owned until 1975, when it was sold to Schmitz of Philadelphia, another historic local brewer. By the 80s, the Ortlieb brand was discontinued and production ceased at its original brewery. Jax Beer was once a familiar name in the American South. It was first brewed in Jacksonville, Florida, in 1913 by the Jacksonville Brewing Company. The name Jax was short for Jacksonville, and the beer quickly gained local popularity. In 1935, the New Orleans-based Jackson Brewing Company, also known as Jax Brewery, acquired exclusive rights to the Jax Beer name. This move allowed them to market it more broadly across the Gulf South, without competition from the original Florida brewery. After that point, Jax Beer became closely associated with New Orleans. During the 40s and 50s, Jax Brewery was one of the largest independent breweries in the South. It produced more than 400,000 barrels a year and distributed beer across multiple southern states. By 1974, the Jackson Brewing Company was struggling to maintain its market share. That same year, it was sold to the Pearl Brewing Company, which was based in San Antonio, Texas. Pearl continued producing Jax Beer for a short time, but the brand was eventually discontinued. Erlanger Beer entered the American beer market in the mid-70s as a premium German-style lager. It was brewed by the Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company, one of the largest beer producers in the United States at the time. Positioned as a higher-end alternative to mainstream lagers, Erlanger was designed to compete with imported European beers, offering a smooth, full-bodied taste inspired by traditional German brewing techniques. The beer was marketed as a super premium brand, appealing to drinkers looking for a more refined option. Schlitz used advanced brewing methods to create a crisp, well-balanced beer with a distinctive malt character. Packaging and branding emphasized its European influence, making it stand out from the typical American lagers of the era. It benefited from the growing interest in specialty and imported beers, which were seen as more sophisticated alternatives to mass-market brands. By the early 80s, Schlitz was struggling with declining sales and internal management issues. Quality control problems with some of its mainline beers damaged the company's reputation, and Erlanger, despite being positioned as a premium product, could not escape the effects. Lone Star Beer became a staple in Texas during the 70s. First brewed in 1884 in San Antonio, it was one of the first mechanized breweries in the state. By the early 70s, Lone Star had positioned itself as the national beer of Texas. Marketing during the decade focused on rodeos, country music, and the outdoors. Lone Star became associated with a rugged, independent image. It sponsored events and partnered with rising music stars. This increased visibility helped it become one of the most recognized beers in the region. The beer itself was a typical American lager, light, easy to drink, and affordable. It competed with other regional beers like Pearl and national giants, like Budweiser. Ownership changes started to affect the brand in the late 70s. Lone Star Brewing Company was sold multiple times, first to Olympia Brewing in 1976, then later to G. Heilemann Brewing Company. Each transition brought changes in management and strategy. By the 80s, production began to slow. The original San Antonio brewery closed in 1996. Lone Star Beer still exists today, but it is no longer made by the original company or brewed in San Antonio. Established in 1880 by the Berger family in Cincinnati, Ohio, Berger Beer gained popularity in the Midwest as a reliable, working-class beer. During the mid-20th century, Berger Beer became a staple in the Ohio and Kentucky region. By the 50s and 60s, it had built a solid distribution network and was competing with major regional brands like Hudepohl and Schönling. By the early 70s, Berger Beer had a strong presence in bars, grocery stores, and stadiums across the Midwest. It was particularly popular in Cincinnati, where locals embraced it as a hometown beer. The brewery continued to push its advertising efforts, sponsoring sports teams and local events to maintain visibility. At its peak, Berger Beer was among the top-selling regional beers. It was affordable and easy to drink, making it a go-to option for casual beer drinkers. The American beer industry saw major shifts in the late 70s. In 1973, the Berger Brewing Company was acquired by Hudepohl Brewing, another Cincinnati-based beer company. As sales declined, Berger Beer lost its spot in bars and grocery stores, fading from its once prominent position. Andeker Beer was introduced by the Pabst Brewing Company in 1939 as a high-end European-style lager. The name Andeker was inspired by the German town of Andechs, known for its monastic brewing tradition. Pabst aimed to compete in the premium beer market by offering something smoother and stronger than its mainstream options. Andeker had a higher alcohol content than regular lagers and was brewed with a longer aging process. By the 70s, Andeker was positioned as a top-tier beer in the Pabst lineup. It was advertised as a continental or European-type lager, which made it stand out in a crowded market dominated by lighter American beers. The bottle design featured a heavy, dark label with gold accents, giving it a distinct look. Pabst used slogans like "the aristocrat of beers" to push its upscale image. Some bars and restaurants sold it as a premium draft, and it gained a niche following among beer drinkers looking for a fuller taste. Andeker's decline began in the late 70s. Pabst was struggling financially and couldn't keep up with larger competitors. It quietly disappeared from store shelves and bars by the early 80s without any major announcement or farewell campaign. Sterling Beer first appeared in 1863 in Evansville, Indiana. It was brewed by the Sterling Brewers, Inc., a company that would later become one of the largest independent breweries in the Midwest. Sterling was known for producing affordable, reliable beer. By the 70s, Sterling Beer had grown into a recognizable name in the central United States, especially in Indiana, Kentucky, and parts of Illinois. The 70s marked the peak of Sterling's visibility in the market. It was part of a crowded field of regional beers that offered straightforward lagers with no frills. Sterling Beer positioned itself as a working-class beverage, inexpensive and widely available in bars, corner stores, and supermarkets. It was commonly sold in stubby bottles and classic aluminum cans, often alongside other budget-friendly brews like Pabst, Falstaff, and Blatz. Sterling wasn't trying to compete with national giants like Anheuser-Busch or Miller on a large scale. Ownership changed hands a few times. The beer recipe also changed, losing some of its original character. Production eventually moved away from Evansville. The last real version of Sterling Beer was brewed in the mid-90s, before the brand faded out completely. Ruppert Knickerbocker Beer was once a well-known name in American brewing. The beer was named after the Knickerbockers, a nickname for New Yorkers that originated from Dutch settlers in the region. Jacob Ruppert, a former U.S. congressman and businessman, founded the brewery in 1867. He later became famous for owning the New York Yankees and bringing Babe Ruth to the team. The beer survived Prohibition by producing near beer, a low-alcohol version that met legal requirements. When Prohibition ended in 1933, Ruppert Knickerbocker Beer returned to full strength and quickly gained a strong customer base. By the 1950s and 1950s, it was widely distributed, benefiting from New York's massive market and strong branding. During the 60s, competition in the beer industry intensified. National brands like Budweiser and Miller expanded aggressively, investing heavily in advertising and distribution. Smaller regional brewers struggled to keep up. Ruppert Knickerbocker Beer maintained a loyal following but faced challenges in staying competitive. The Jacob Ruppert Brewing Company sold its operations to Rheingold Breweries in 1965, marking the beginning of the end for Knickerbocker Beer. Known for its affordability and widespread availability, Buckhorn Beer became a recognizable name in the beer industry during a time when regional breweries still had a foothold in the market. It was produced by the Falstaff Brewing Corporation, a company that had been in operation since the late 1800s. Falstaff, at one point, was the third largest brewer in the United States, competing with other big names like Schlitz and Anheuser-Busch. The company launched Buckhorn as an economical brand, targeting consumers who wanted a reliable beer at a low cost. Throughout the 70s, Buckhorn gained traction in the Midwest and Western states. Grocery stores and liquor shops carried it as an affordable alternative to more premium brands. It was not considered a high-end beer, but it was widely consumed due to its low price and accessibility. It also found a market in rural areas where budget beers held strong appeal. During this period, Falstaff faced financial difficulties and began losing market share. The company was sold to the S&P Company in 1975, and by the late 70s, many of its brands, including Buckhorn, began to disappear from shelves. If any of these brought back memories or made you curious about what your parents used to sip, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more blasts from the past, and drop a comment below. Which beer do you think deserves a comeback? Until next time, keep it chill and keep it vintage.